Hi, welcome to A Chef Called Rhonda. I'm Rhonda and this is my kitchen. And today I'm going to be showing you how to make meatballs, a classic Neapolitan recipe hailed from the island of Ischia, brought to you and passed down to me by my grandmother. First, I'd like to begin by showing you the ingredients and telling you a little bit about this classic Italian meatball recipe. Hails two ingredients that are not traditionally utilized in your American meatball or your American Italian style meatball. I have 1 1/4 pounds of, yes, this is extra lean, and yes, you can use ground chuck. I have 1 1/4 pounds of ground lean beef. Can you see that? 2 room temperature eggs, a 1/4 cup of already chopped Vidalia onion. It offers the sweetness. I've already chopped it in the effort to save time. I have only, in today's recipe, 2 cloves of garlic, which I did mince finely. Can you see that? Just 2 cloves. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of a good quality sea salt. I have about 3/4 cup of seasoned breadcrumbs. Today I am using store-bought breadcrumbs. Would grandmother approve? Hardly. She would keep her day-old bread and make a traditional seasoned homemade breadcrumb. The differentiation between the American meatball recipe and a classic Neapolitan recipe. I have about a 1/3 cup of pre-soaked currants. C-U-R-R-A-N-T-S, currants. The currant will offer a sweetness, followed by a 1/4 cup of your pinoli nuts, or here in America we call them pine nuts. These little gems offer a tender and buttery flavor to this meatball recipe. Followed by, and I have my Italian seasoning, traditional Italian seasoning, and then I have a good quality extra virgin olive oil. Can you see that? Let's roll up our sleeves and get together and make our homemade classic Neapolitan style meatballs. First, what we need to do, separate ever so gently. We do not really want the warmth from our hands to touch the ground beef all that much. Next, I'm going to pop the yolks of my 2 room temperature eggs, very light whisk. I will then add them right across our ground beef. Next, I will add our 1/3 cup of onion right across the top here. I'll add my 2 cloves of minced garlic. I'm going to now add, which we spoke about, the pre-soaked currants. Yes, if there's any remaining water, I let that go right. 1/4 cup of sweet, tender, buttery pinoli nuts right across. Duly noted here. I've only handled our meat that one time to break up that 1 1/4 pound of ground beef. It can alter the texture of your meatball. Now finally, my 3/4 cup pre-seasoned Italian breadcrumbs. Sea salt. Now, I'm not a big fan of sodium, but in order to really extract that sweetness from the currant, it's a bit necessary. All my ingredients together, and it's time to add our olive oil. I'll add 2 cupfuls. Add 1 teaspoon of fresh Italian seasoning. You might be saying to yourself, well, gee, you have the Italian breadcrumb seasoning, but there's nothing like a punch of Italian seasoning coupled with the currants and the sweet onions will just meld together so nicely. Okay, so here we are. It wouldn't be a chef called Rhonda without our trusty wooden spoon. We want to first incorporate all these nice ingredients with our wooden spoon, thus not touching the meat. I'm going to work my wooden spoon through the meat. I'm using the back edge of my wooden spoon to incorporate all these nice ingredients. The kitchen smells heavenly. Wait till you make this recipe. It's super easy, super fun, super healthy, and super delicious, and super authentico. This recipe is authentic, and the currants, if you haven't had meatball with currants and pinolis, oh, you'll never want to make any other recipe than this. We've all had dry meatballs where they kind of crumble in your mouth and they taste mealy. We don't want to do that here. This recipe, the sweetness from the currants and the fact that they were pre-soaked in warm water really aids the meatball to stay nice and moist. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to say hi to all my subscribers. I want to thank you for subscribing to A Chef Called Rhonda. I hope you're all enjoying. So I just about incorporated all of our ingredients. Okay, now that we've done all we could with our trusty wooden spoon, it's time to put our wooden spoon aside. So we just want to go in and gently just press all the ingredients with the hands to roll our meatballs. Tip, a little secret, a little additional fun fact. I like to take one fistful of mixture and leave it on my cutting board to the right side. I have one baking sheet, parchment paper lined. My oven has been sufficiently preheated to 385 degrees. I'm going to give it maybe 4 little rolls, and if there's an onion hanging out, it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be a rustic meatball with your ingredients baking through. So our oven is preheated to 385 degrees, and I will cook them about 24 minutes. Just about the same. Grandma would put them, because you have to let the meatball cool. Ideally, she would sit this in her Italian gravy. Oh yes, and that's right, we call it Italian gravy. What it is a marinara sauce, right? But these little guys have to cool all the way down, and it's tradition that the Italian grandmother or Italian mother would put her meatballs on the counter in a bowl, all cooked, all browned and smelling heavenly, and she would let them stay there for about 2 hours until sufficiently cooled. Because if you put a warm, hot, steaming meatball into a hot gravy, what's going to happen? The meatball will fall apart. But the fun part was, we all knew that when that bowl went onto that counter with that fresh meatball, we would all run and sneak and grab a meatball and run away. And she would know exactly how many she made. But in the end, we all knew Grandma put that bowl there for a reason. She wanted the kids to take them because she made a double batch. She had her original batch, right? They were in the second round of the cooking. And remember, we talked about the simplicity of the recipe. With only eight ingredients, you can freeze these meatballs for up to 3 to 6 months in your freezer. So you can make a big batch. Coming episodes of A Chef Called Rhonda, I can't wait to teach you how to make that classic Italian gravy. Please, would you hit that subscribe button? Our final meatball, here we are. Meatball making is finito. Super easy, super fun, always healthy, always delicious. Now it's the fun part. We get to count how many meatballs we made. Can you see that? And can you see the bits of goodness? I want to take this baking sheet right up close. Can you see the currants and the onions and the little pinoli? It's time to bake our meatballs at our already preheated 385 degree oven for about 24 minutes, or until just brown on the bottom. Remember the hunk or the fistful of meatball mixture that we reserved? Saving tip brought to you by A Chef Called Rhonda. When I was a little kid, I had the duty of making the mini meatballs. Now, this hunk or fistful of meatball mixture will make hundreds, and you can be here for days. But the upside to this is you are ready, set, go when you make that Italian wedding soup. Bake at 385, therefore, for about 16 minutes. If you've ever had the Italian wedding soup, you know how tiny they are. Everybody looks for the little Italian meatball, right? In the soup, it's like the best part. In coming episodes, I'll be making Italian wedding soup from scratch. Super easy, super healthy, super delicious. As well as the Authentico Italian gravy. There we are. So I would hope, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so now. That way you will get the notifications of our upcoming cooking shows. And if Grandmother was here, actually, she would say to me, with her wooden spoon, of course, she would come across the kitchen and say, these are too big, you need to half them and make 2 out of this. She was Depression era, so everything was about saving. But in any event, these are a little bit too big, but you get the idea. Okay, well, it's time to remove our meatball trays from the oven. Okay, so here's our mini meatballs. And you can see that. Teeny tiny mini meatball. Here is our finished meatball tray. And you can see the top. Ooh, you can see the top, you can see the currants, and you can see the goodness of the onion popping through, and the bottom. And it's just the perfect size, isn't it? You can see the moistness is generated also by the onion, because when the heat interacts with the onion, it throws a bit of liquid, and the juiciness of the currant enables this meatball to stay sweet and tender. It smells heavenly. Cooling timing, proper cooling time for the minis should be about an hour, but the others I'll let sit out for a couple of hours before I do anything with them. Yeah, finito. Our meatballs are in a bowl. They're cooling down sufficiently. Our little mini meatballs are in waiting for that classic wedding soup recipe. Cut right into that meatball. And let's see, oh, you can smell the onion and the currant and it offers such a sweet and vibrant flavor, coupled with the currant and the pinoli and the onion, and the way it's soft, and the onion offers that beautiful softness. You get the bite from the meat, which is nice and soft, and with the standalone 2 meatballs and a side salad. What a perfect pranzo. We added minimal garlic, not to overshadow the sweetness, coupled together with the pinoli and the currant and the onion, and that pinoli adds just another level or another dimension of that texture, coupled with the buttery flavor that a pine nut will render inside most recipes. If you haven't subscribed to A Chef Called Rhonda, please, would you consider subscribing to A Chef Called Rhonda? Please hit the red subscribe button down below. Email me, continue to email me your questions, your comments. Hi to all my subscribers, salute. Well, today we dug in and we rolled up our sleeves and we made that classic Mediterranean meatball. Classic meatball recipe with those 2 coveted ingredients that Grandma always prided herself on, currants and pine nuts. Very simple recap. I preheated my oven to 385 degrees. I lined 2 baking sheets with parchment paper. I had 1 1/4 pound of ground beef. I opted for the 93% lean. Certainly you can use ground chuck. I had 2 room temperature whole eggs. I had 1 cup of Italian seasoned breadcrumbs, store-bought at that. I chopped about 1/2 of a sweet Vidalia onion. I had 1/3 of pre-soaked currants, and I had 1/4 cup of pine nuts. In addition to that, I had a teaspoon of good quality Italian seasoning and 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. I broke apart ever so gently the ground beef in our preparation bowl. I let that sit. I topped the ground beef with 2 room temperature eggs, followed by my chopped onion, followed by my 2 cloves of garlic, which I minced ever so slight. Then I added our breadcrumbs, followed by our pre-soaked currants, followed by our pinoli nuts, and I then added the salt. In addition to adding the breadcrumbs, I then took our 2 capfuls of extra virgin olive oil. The back of my trusty wooden spoon. Trusty wooden spoon always makes an appearance. I took the back edge of my trusty wooden spoon and I worked the mixture until all the ingredients came together and were fully incorporated. I reincorporated the mixture by hand for about 20 seconds. Once the mixture was all together, I rolled out about 2 tablespoons of meatball mixture and made my meatballs. But before that, you might remember, I reserved a fistful of meatball mixture and I left it off to the side of my cutting board to make my mini meatballs for my upcoming Italian wedding soup. Baked our meatballs for 24 minutes in a 385-degree oven, just until the bottoms were golden brown and the house filled with heavenly scents of meatball merriness. Thanks. Well, from my kitchen to yours, I wanted to thank you for watching A Chef Called Rhonda. Please, if you have not subscribed already, please do so. It's always healthy, always delicious, and always fun. Until we meet again, salute. Cheers. Bye. Bye. Chindan.